It's me, JD. Welcome to a free-to-player's guide on how to beat the Summerside story, A Midsummer Paradise. Just before I was about to record this guide video, Smilegate decided to release a quick patch regarding the new side story event. And I thought I was going to have to change the guide because of the changes that they were going to make here. But after looking at what they changed regarding the event, I don't think I'll need to change the guide in any way. I'm not sure how the event, how different the difficulty of the event actually will be based on the nerfs that they made on it. They decreased the boss's attack on Hot Spring level 5, and they also increased the boss's berserk from 12 turns to 15 turns. These nerfs will make the boss a bit easier to deal with and give you a bit more time to try and kill it. But I don't think the attack and the turns are really were really that important to beating the boss because of another mechanic that I'll be talking about later in the video. And also, they renamed level 4 and 5 to Hot Spring Challenge level 1 and 2. The guide was meant for Hot Spring level 5, but since they changed the name, I guess I'll just be calling it Hot Spring Challenge level 2. So with that being said, let's get into the guide itself. Okay, so once again, I'm a free-to-play player, but the title's a bit clickbait because I'm not using a free-to-play team, really. Mostly because this is not a free-to-play friendly event. If you care a lot about the whole pay-to-win aspect of this, you can make a stink on the forums. Maybe it'll take a look at it and, you know, redesign some of the mechanics of this event. But other than that, I'll go into what we'll cover in the video. So first, I'll just show you the stats of all the heroes that I'm using in both my teams, and then I'll talk about the boss mechanics, and then I'll do an in-depth description on my team, and then we'll talk about possible alternative team comps, whether or not a fully free-to-play team could actually beat this event on level 5 or suspicious challenge level 2. So I'll just show you a quick overview of the stats. OB Luluca, I'm using her. These are her stats. I'm using Guardian Ice Crystals, Spectani. These are her stats. Cerise. These are the stats of my Cerise. ML Bologna. These are the stats of my ML Bologna. Landy. On Bloodstone. Senya. Pavel. So I'll just get through the controversial stuff right now. Yes, I am using OB Luluca in my teams, and this is the exact teams with the exact stats I used to beat challenge level 2. I can't really show you it because I beat it once and I can't enter it again. And I'll just answer the question whether or not you can sub out OB Luluca for something else. And in my opinion, at least pre-nerf, it's virtually impossible to do this event on challenge level 2 without OB Luluca. Now, you could probably try and replace OB Luluca with Roana in the key slot, but you'll run into a lot of issues during the fight. So now let's talk about the boss fight itself, the boss mechanics, how they work. And we'll start with the special mechanic in the event. And it's also the pay-to-win mechanic. There is a key slot in your team, and the hero that you put into it is called the lead hero. It's the 4th slot on the team, the last slot in the back. The hero that you put into this slot will also be included in Team 2. So this hero will be both in Phase 1 and Phase 2. The pay-to-win mechanic comes also in this slot. If you have OB Luluca as the lead hero in the key slot, her attack increases by 30%, her max health increases by 30%, and her effectiveness increases by 100%. Also, there's a boss mechanic called Memory Fragment, and it basically just gets rid of it, depending on how many imprints you have in OB Luluca. Plus, add on top of that, all the damage you deal increases by 40%, at least for me. It actually scales with imprints, which is another which is the pay to win mechanic here. If you don't have any imprints for OB Luluca, the boss's memory fragment will be level 2. At B, it'll drop to the boss's memory fragment level will drop to level 1, and you get a 20% damage buff. And then on imprint A, you'll remove the memory fragment mechanic, and your damage will increase by 40%. I tried this fight on OB Luluca memory imprint B, but there was a bit too much RNG with the fight, so I couldn't really get it consistent. So I increased the imprint level to A, and I managed to do with A with semi decently geared units. I'd say they're actually pretty badly geared units. So I think if you had really good gear on your team, on the heroes that you use, you could probably beat the fight using OB Luluca imprint level B. Just to save a lot of hassle, imprint level A is the bare minimum requirement to complete challenge level 2. I don't agree that you should have a unit that needs imprints in order to finish this event on the highest level, but I'm not Smilegate. I think it's a predatory mechanic. You know, needing imprints on a hero, on a limited time hero, in order to even to complete the event level is bullshit. Anyway, though, let's get into the boss fight itself. So in phase 1 of the Lethe boss fight, she'll have access to some skills. Let's talk about the passive limit break. Her passive limit break does a few things. One, she takes first turn when you enter the fight, and she'll use her skill freeze. She grants herself undispellable buff memory fragment level 3. And at level 3, there's a 50% chance to counterattack with freeze whenever she gets attacked by anything. And it also increases her attack for 2 turns. This counter doesn't have any cooldown, meaning that it can activate on any single instance of damage you deal to her, including counters, extra attacks, and attacks that say they can't be countered. So for example, if you were using Alencia and you use S1 into S2, memory fragment can proc on S1, so she'll activate freeze. She'll get the attack buff activate freeze on your team, and when Alencia extra attacks with S2, it could proc it again, and so another AoE counter. Another thing, if Lethe evades an attack, she gives herself an attack buff and gives her an extra turn. And on her 12th turn, before it used to be on her 12th turn, but now they nerfed it. On her 15th turn, she'll get Berserk, and on the next turn, she'll wipe your team. Next, let's talk about Freeze. Freeze is an AoE skill. It does decent damage, and it does a lot of things. First, Freeze starts the battle with no CD, meaning she'll use Freeze right at the beginning of the fight. When she uses it, she gives herself a 3-turn speed buff. It has a 3-turn cooldown, and it'll strip all the buffs from your team, and then it inflicts 4 debuffs onto your team. 2 of the debuffs, Ominous Omen and Deep Sea Curse, will always land no matter what. It even lands on evasion, and it can be cleansed if you meet certain requirements. So let's talk about Ominous Omen. Ominous Omen doesn't actually do anything by itself, but it is a stacking debuff, meaning it starts at level 1 when it gets applied. Whenever you get hit with freeze, it'll increase the level by 1. And if you get hit by her auto attack, her S1, it'll also increase by 1 until it hits level 4. Deep Sea Curse is the other special debuff that she puts on. It decreases your defense by 30%, and at the end of your turn, Lethe gets a 20% combat readiness boost. It can be cleansed if you use an AoE attack that isn't a basic attack, so your S1. So you think Bellion S1 will not cleanse Deep Sea Curse. Next, Frostbite and Restrict are just normal debuffs. They can be cleansed, resisted normally. I don't know what the resist requirement is to actually resist these debuffs. Lethe's S1 Wave Slash. This is a single target attack. It has pretty low damage, so you don't really have to worry about getting hit with it. It inflicts target debuff. The second part is that it it adds 1 level to Ominous Omen to the character that it hits. When Wave Slash hits a unit and an Ominous Omen is level 4 after the hit, then it'll activate Call of the Abyss as an extra attack on the same target. For extra attack, Call of the Abyss, it is a single target with an additional AoE damage after, and it does a lot of damage, extremely high damage. If you get hit by 2 of these in a row, you'll probably wipe, at least pre-nerf. I'm not sure about after. It cleanses all debuffs from Lethe. It counts as an extra attack and has 2 parts to it. First is the single target on the unit that is triggered on, and then after it finishes, it will also do additional AoE damage. It strips all of the buffs from the single target that it hits, and it penetrates defense, but it doesn't crit. When it does hit the single target, it cleanses Ominous Omen from that single target. It decreases the Ominous Omen level by 1 for the rest of the team that the additional damage hits. Her final passive in phase 1 is basically a reset on the fight. It's the start of phase 2. She'll just when she reaches 50% health, she'll attack your team, disable it, and then we move on to phase 2. So phase 2 has basically the same mechs as phase 1, except for just one passive. The strategic withdrawal is changed to Sorrowful Sea's Dream, and basically it gives herself a crit hit chance buff for 1 turn if one of your teammates has Deep Sea Curse at the end of their turn. Okay, so those are all the boss mechanics, and now I'll talk about how my team specifically works in Challenge Level 2 and how I managed to pull it off as a free-to-play player. The most important thing, again, is OB Luluca in the key slot position. Even more egregious is that I found this out after I tried doing the Challenge Level 2, is that OB Luluca doesn't really need a lot of stats for this. You can see I've only moloed her S3 once. And my gear for her, I kind of just slapped on some random pieces that I had lying around. She does not need immunity set, and she doesn't actually even need to be that tanky. In all of my runs, she pretty much had no problem surviving, and she doesn't really need the effect resistance either. The only thing she really needs in Challenge Level 2 is some speed. Preferably, I'd say maybe 220, between 220 and 240 speed is what you need on her in order to have her do everything she needs to do in the fight. And she does a lot of things. Not only is she really tanky because of the buffs that lead hero enhancement gives her, but she actually removes the memory fragment mechanic. And if you remember from the boss mechanics, if you remember a bit earlier when I was talking about memory fragment, this is actually one of the most annoying things about fighting Lethe without OB Luluca, is that basically Lethe will always counter you with freeze, which actually does a lot of damage, and it applies all the debuffs. Even though I'm a free-to-play player, I was lucky enough to have a couple of regular Luluca dupes in my storage, so I just imprinted her up to A. I did try to do the fight on imprint level B, but on imprint level B, you don't remove Lethe's memory fragment completely. It just decreases it to memory fragment level 1 when you fight her. And I believe at level 2 memory fragment, she has Lethe has a 20%, 30% chance to counter with freeze. And on memory fragment level 1, Lethe has a 10% chance to counter with freeze whenever she's attacked. In my experience, the 10% chance, although it sounds low, if you get hit by it more than like once or twice in the fight, you'll probably lose. So I think that it's possible to finish Challenge Level 2 using OB Luluca on imprint B, but for the most consistent results, you should be using OB Luluca level imprint A. So not only does OB Luluca provide a lot of benefits to the team when you have her imprinted and in the key slot position, but her kit also works really well in the boss fight. She's both a cleanser and a healer and a stripper in the fight itself. Her S3 will her S3 is a cleanse. It removes the restrict and frostbite from your team. It also gives them increased defense and ice cream, which will heal them after they get attacked. And then her passive, Luluca's special delivery, will strip Lethe of her buffs when Luluca reaches max focus, which is 5 focus. With OB Luluca there, you don't really need another cleanser, healer, or stripper for the fight. I didn't really focus on stripping Lethe of her buffs or healing really. I was more focused on just dealing as much damage as possible to Lethe. Next, Spectenny. I usually just use Spectenny in PvE content where I'm struggling and she can kind of be used. Lethe actually doesn't have that many AoEs compared to a lot of other bosses. She has just 2, which is Freeze, which won't kill her, won't kill Spectenny, and she has Call of the Abyss, which actually could kill Spectenny if your Spectenny is a bit too squishy. Mine is basically on the borderline of squishiness, of almost getting one shot by the additional damage from Call of the Abyss. But what's important is that Spectenny should have a lifesteal set in order to sustain the damage she takes from the AoEs. Also, if you can tell, my Spectenny is actually geared for PvP because I'm using Tagahals. Next, Cerise. I kind of just threw together random pieces of gear onto Cerise. The thing with your frontline unit with Cerise, I made her tanky so that she could survive getting hit from Lethe. She's got some speed, a little bit of speed on her, and some effectiveness. Lethe on challenge level 2 has 100% effect resistance, so you need at least 85 effectiveness to land your debuffs. Cerise puts on decreased speed, which is pretty good to counter the increased speed that Lethe gets. I didn't use S2 at all during the fight actually, and her S1 is a dual attack, so it can help with DPS. So ML Bologna. I use ML Bologna as the second main DPS of the team, and I believe actually she probably did more damage to Lethe than my Spectenny did. This is probably the most built unit I have on there. I don't have her fully mullered. That would probably help with damage. But Sigurd's Scythe. But ML Bologna does need some tanky stats, a little bit of speed, and a lot of damage. You can either use Sigurd's Scythe or a lifesteal set in order to survive Call of the Abyss when Lethe uses it. And other than that, you use souls in the first phase of the boss on ML Bologna. I used the souls at least, so she can keep on single target nuking Lethe to do damage. And this soul is pretty good for that. So moving on to team 2, I use Landy, and this is probably the most free-to-play friendly unit on both the teams. I have a lot of level 75 gear, level 71 pieces of gear on her, and her stats are not very good. They could definitely be way better, but this Landy works, so I decided not to re-gear it. I'm using Bloodstone on Landy just for extra sustain, extra healing in phase 2. She is a main DPS. The frontline unit I'm using is Senya in phase 2. Senya, make her tanky, and that's about it actually. All she really needs to do is tank Lethe's Call of the Abyss, and she kind of just does damage, does a little bit of extra damage to Lethe because of the nature of her kit. Very good tank for this boss fight. The Pavel I'm using is actually the same Pavel I use for my Banshee 13 one-shot. So that's why some of his stats look a bit weird for this this fight. I don't have a lot of crit chance on him actually, but I pretty much all in on attack and crit hit damage. Daydream Joker helps with the damage. I believe it works on Lethe. So that is the overview of the units I'm using for this boss fight. You could replace a lot of these units probably with something else, maybe a more free-to-play friendly option. For Team 1, I believe that every person should have Spec Tenny. I'm going to consider Spec Tenny as a free-to-play option because she's available in the Moonlight selection. Honestly, you could probably slot in any frontliner in the frontline position. It can be any tanky damage dealing unit with an AoE, a consistent AoE that can dispel Deep Sea Curse every time Lethe applies it to them. So instead of Cerise, you could probably use something like, you could use Alencia. You could probably even use Shu in the first position. ML Bologna is purely just there to do damage. If you have any, she can be replaced with literally any damage dealing unit. If they're tanky enough to survive Call of the Abyss's additional damage. You could probably replace her with Zahak, Rimuru, Sid, Violet. Any of those units would work in place of ML Bologna. This team too is all RGB 5-star units. You can replace it with any other RGB 5-star units that do a lot of damage and have AoE. That's the important part, is when you're building team comps or when you're building alternative teams for this, you have to have damage dealers that can do AoEs. The only unit that cannot do that that I'm using is Spec Tenny, and that's just because she's so good that she doesn't really need to do it. The reason why you really want damage dealers with AoEs and frontliners with AoEs is because of Deep Sea Curse. When you use an AoE, it dispels Deep Sea Curse, and not only does it make you a bit tankier because you won't have the decreased defense, but it also will stop Lethe from kind of turn cycling you in the fight. If you have units with Deep Sea Curse, Lethe will just keep getting more turns, and then she'll berserk and she'll wipe your team. So that's why it's important to have AoEs in your teams. Your units should have AoEs. Just some extra tips for the boss fight. Avoid using evasion units as frontline units. So Violet is an earth unit, and you could use Violet in this boss fight, but don't put him in the front line. I learned this the hard way, but evasion units have a weird interaction with Ominous Omen, the debuff. So basically, if you get hit, so if your frontline evasion unit, like say Violet's in the front line, if Violet has Ominous Omen level 4, and he gets attacked by Lethe, and then she activates Call of the Abyss on him, if he dodges the Call of the Abyss single target damage, it does not reset, it does not cleanse Ominous Omen from him. So you'll have Ominous Omen level 4, but it still does the additional damage to the rest of your team. So, and then what Lethe will do is she'll attack Violet again, and then activate Call of the Abyss again, and the additional damage from the second one will wipe your team. So do not put evasion units in the front because you want to get hit with the single target of Call of the Abyss in order to cleanse level 4 Omen, Ominous Omen. There is a substantial level of RNG in this boss fight because OB Luluca does put on a miss debuff. You don't need to build any effectiveness on her because her effectiveness is increased by 100% in this event. But she does, when she strips buffs from Lethe, she'll put on a miss debuff, and that could kill your team because she might miss the Call of the Abyss single target on your frontline unit, and so she'll use Call of the Abyss twice in a row, which will kill you. You know, once again, very important, don't forget about AoE skills. And you kind of want to time your AoE skills with Freeze's cooldown in order to have as many turns without Deep Sea Curse, because if you take too many turns with Deep Sea Curse on your units, Lethe will get closer to her berserk timer and she'll wipe your team. For my first team, the AoEs, ML Bologna's AoE is kind of just RNG. She'll just do it whenever, and in my experience, she just did it enough times where Deep Sea Curse wasn't a problem for her. OB Luluca's S2, it is an AoE, so no need to worry. So she kind of does her AoE on her own as well. The only AoE that I controlled in phase 1 was Cerise's S3. In phase 2, the game plan's the same. You want to AoE after Lethe uses freeze. I use Soul Burns in the second phase on Senya because it decreases her AoE cooldown by 2 turns. And in situations where your Senya's S3 AoE is up and Lethe is going to use freeze on the next turn, it's better to save the S3. This team comp also works on level 4 of Lethe with 100% auto clear rate. I don't think I failed an auto clear on level 4 yet with this team. It might not be like the fastest or most efficient way to farm level 4, but it works, so I'm just going to use it. So the team can auto challenge level 1 just fine, and I'll just show you a quick one.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Here's one on the house. I didn't want to have to do this, but it seems I have no choice.
Rude, ignorant, immoral. These words are too good for you. Melt away. Fall into nightmare. Cheap tricks won't work on me.
This way. Assist me.
How can I help? Hey you! Watch out! I tried to warn them.
Help.
Oh, there's no need to thank me.
Get out of my sight.
I'm well aware of what you're planning.
It can't be helped. This is going to hurt.
Utter disgrace. You belong in the ditch. This is insane. Why am I so busy? There's never enough time.
How naive.
Dealing with you is just a waste of my time.
Assist me.
Nice. Don't be afraid. I'll end it now.
Help.
Who's bothering you? Here's one on the house. Whenever, wherever. That's the Luluca promise.
I didn't want to have to do this, but it seems I have no choice.
You merely delay the inevitable.
Give up now.
If you keep swarming, you'll only prolong the pain. You can run, but you can't hide.
Northern wind, grant us strength.
I can hear them.
These vengeful voices.
Taking point.
I will not miss.
Behold! This is insane. Why am I so busy? There's never enough time.
Requesting backup.
I'll cover you. Track and kill.
Full frontal assault. That's in order.
Here's one
go. Until it pierces the heart of man. Until the end.
A shot to your heart.
Hurry!
Mounting an attack.
That was never gonna work.
May the grace of the battlefield be with you.
You'll never get close to me. Such incompetence.
You didn't see this coming. That was close. Over.
Oh, there's no need to thank me. This is insane. Why am I so busy? There's never enough time.
By my will and for my honor.
All right, that'll be it for my free-to-play player's guide on how to beat challenge level 2 Lethe boss fight in the event. If I missed anything, you can let me know in the comments or share any of the team comps that have worked for you, and that'll be it for me. Have a great rest of your day, night, or whatever time it is for you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.